Here's our next step in solving for equations. This is going to help us with volume problems, and you'll see how it applies. So in the first scenario, you have x is equal to -2, and you're trying to figure out what y is. So this one starts out with pretty basic, just taking the x and plugging it back in. So y is equal to 3. -2 goes in for the x plus 4. 3 times the -2 is the -6 plus the 4. And then combining that right-hand side becomes -2. So given an x and you solve for y. In this scenario, you're given the y and you have to solve for x. So y is -2. So -2 is equal to 3x plus 4. So now you're solving backwards to get this x. Subtract 4 from both sides. And I get -6 is equal to 3x. Still have to solve for that x. So the reverse of that becomes -2 is equal to x. So I was given a y, and I have to solve to get the x. In this scenario, you're given a fraction. Just like the other two, you still have to solve for a variable, but the fraction throws it off a little bit. So I'm going to give you that x is equal to, let's say, 4. Or sorry, that y is equal to 4. So I have the 2/3 x plus 5. So I still have to solve for this x. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. I'm left with -1 is equal to 2/3 x. I still have to solve for this x, just complicates it when I have a fraction. So take the reverse, remember the reverse is just the flip, the reciprocal of the 2/3, and I get 3/2. If I multiply 2/3 by 3/2, it becomes 1. It's like canceling out. So this cancels out this. I still have to multiply it by this side. So I take that and I multiply this side by the 3/2. So multiply straight across the top. Remember that this is just a simple fraction of 1. 3 times -1 is your -3 over the 2 times the 1, which becomes the 2, and it cancels out to left the 1 over here, so then your x is 2. Here's why I did that quick review. Let's say I have a volume formula. My big B is usually here. So in this scenario, if I have the 1/3 big BH, and then I replace the big B with pi r squared, that tells me that I'm dealing with a circle, a volume of some kind of a circle. That's why the pi r squared becomes the big B. So let's say that my volume is 400. And let's say that I gave you a height of 8. So in this scenario, I would be telling you that the volume is 400, the height is 8, and you're asked to find what the radius is. So just like the other 3 scenarios, I still have to solve for the radius to figure out what that is. So I'm going to get rid of this h. Remember, it was a multiply up here, multiply up here. So to undo that operation, I'm going to divide this side by 8. That cancels this out. I'm left with 50 is equal to 1/3 pi r squared. I still have to solve for that r. Okay, so you can choose to get rid of the 1/3 first, or the pi first, or you could do it all together. I'm going to show you a step-by-step process. So I'm going to divide by pi, and I'm going to divide by pi over here. That cancels out that. Go to my calculator, and I'm going to do 50 divided by pi. That gives me a rounded error. Remember that pi is a very long number. So 15.9 is what I'm going to use, is equal to 1/3 r squared. I still have to solve for this r, so the reciprocal of this 1/3 is the 3. So if I times this side by 3, that cancels out, and I times this side by 3. I'm going to times that by 3, and I get 47.75. Rounding. We'll talk about rounding errors in the next section. So here I'm still left with this r squared. I don't want r squared because that doesn't help me. I need to figure out what the radius is. So I'm just going to take that and take the square root of it. The square root of 47.74